This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us on today's DC VMUG or V user group, Veeam user group session. Apologize there. Um, my name is Al Rashid. I'm a VUG leader. I've been a VUG leader for about a year now. I'm joined by my fellow VUG leader, Nico Stein. Nico, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Al. Yeah, welcome everyone. I'm just like Al. I'm a VUC leader for about a year now. Just like Al and Chris, I'm a Veeam Vanguard. So see my logo, right? And I'm happy everyone could join, and I'm looking forward to learn about Chris's book writing process and skills.
For sure, for sure. So that's a nice transition segue. Chris, if you'd like to introduce yourself, feel free to do so.
Sure. Hey guys, my name's Chris Childerhose. I work at a managed service provider. Like these guys, I'm a Veeam Vanguard, but I'm also a Veeam Legend too, book author, and all around good guy.
I would agree, for sure, for sure.
I suppose, yeah.
Yes, for sure. Chris, thank you for joining. Again, Madalena, thank you for hosting. And for those that have joined us on the call, thank you as well for taking the time to do such. We're going to go ahead and get this kicked off. There is no deck, there is no presentation. It's more of like a fireside chat, if you want to refer to it as that. Just a few questions for Chris. Between Nico and I, we're going to take turns and alternate questions here and there. And at the conclusion of today's session, or during the session, if you want to drop a question in the chat, Nico and myself can ask that question or pose it to Chris on your behalf. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Chris, what inspired you to write a book in the first place?
Nothing technically inspired me. I was actually approached from Pact Publishing, who is the people that have published my book and whatnot, asking me if I would care to write a book on Veeam. I was a little apprehensive at first. Thought, okay, well, let's give this a shot. The first book took a long time to come out because of the process itself, but I think it was well worth it because a couple more books followed, and a fourth one will come out this year.
Sounds good.
Very good. So another question I have, but I think everyone knows, first of all, what Chris has written, but if not, if someone is not familiar, so I have two questions right now. Can you let the audience know what you've written about? It's probably Veeam, but and how many books you've written?
Yeah, sure. It is about Veeam, yes. The series is called Mastering Veeam Backup Replication. You can find it on Pact Publishing as well as Amazon. And I started in version 10, which was a couple years ago. Wrote a book on version 11. There's one out now on version 12. And there will soon to be this year a version 13 book coming out. So
Okay, very well. So can you share your writing process for this book or the past books? Like, do you have a special routine, or is it like in the movies, you have a typewriting and sit out in France or something like that?
not really. They give you kind of a template to work with. It's formatted in a specific way. I know the very first book I did, the whole process took a long time for the book to come out. I think it was about 6 months, uh, maybe even longer, only because you have to get used to the template itself, which is formatted in a specific way. And then as you go back and forth with the authors and the reviewers and stuff, they send back comments. You have to look at them. You have to revise things or change things, or even put in a comment and say, no, I'm not changing this because this is how it is within the Veeam software and whatnot. But I would also take 1 or 2 hours every night after dinner, come upstairs, shut the door in my office, do some writing, then go back downstairs. I know um, it cut into family time, but was well worth it. So.
Cool, cool. And I think the next question is going to kind of relate to many of us here on this call, whether you're a blogger or if you have some technical articles that you write, whether it's for your personal goal or, internally at work. How, Chris, as an author, do you overcome writer's block or maybe periods of low motivation? Because I'm sure that happens. It's just getting over it is probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah, it does. Um, I know for the books, I didn't really have that because every time I would come out with a new version, I'd either be at VeeamON or at the V100 Summit, which we get to attend, and you see all these new features, and it's like, okay, good, I'm excited about the next book. But then blogging is a similar thing too, right? You get excited, but then there's also low times when I find I'm busy with work, and then it's like, okay, I'm not doing enough here. I got to get back to blogging and stuff. So I take time out. I'll go for a walk around the block or something like that, think of some ideas of things to write about and whatnot, and then come back and put hands to keyboard and put things out there.
And that makes sense. I think it also it applies to just life in and work in general. Sometimes you have to
Yep.
step away, get some fresh air, gather your thoughts, and just kind of
Yep.
regroup and recollect. So that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into the next question I have. And you already indicated that it affected a bit of the family life, but how do you balance the other applications, right? You have job, then there's an outage there, then you have family. The wife wants to go on a trip, or yeah, how do you balance book writing or writing in general with your family life and other applications?
It's challenging, but I find that I'm very multitasking and whatnot. So a lot of times, even if I had, don't tell my employer this, but if I had downtime at work, I would sit and do a bit of writing during the day while I'm working and whatnot. But it was just work, go down, have dinner for a little bit with family, chat, everything, come back up, write for 1 or 2 hours, then go back down and spend the rest of the night with family. So it was just it was a juggling act, but I made it work.
Yeah, I mean, you must have made it work because you're writing other books. So otherwise, family had probably said, "No, you're done." You probably would have been done.
Oh no, now it's like, okay, well, you need some extra money, write another book.
Okay, there you go. That trumps it all.
Nico, I'll be
Yep.
connecting with you offline and propose a book for the two of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's good. And kind of if I can follow up to that, Chris, you said, times you've had time to, work on the book during your workday, right? But I'm sure there were opportunities as you were writing that benefited you in the workplace.
Yes.
For
Yeah,
this.
absolutely there were certain topics in my books that I touched on that I've actually not really used at work. And it gave me a chance to sit there and say, okay, CDP was one of them. I wrote a chapter on CDP, and I don't remember which book it was. I think it was version 11. And it allowed me to install it in our lab and test it and work with it and things like that. So as you're going through, you do the outlines and you think of things not so common that you use every day. Like everybody knows what the console looks like and wants to write a chapter just on the console. So I think of things that, okay, I don't use them, but I want to write about them so that people will understand them better and whatnot.
Right. And that's actually a good opportunity. It's something that you may not use on a regular basis. This
Yes.
gives you the opportunity to test that in theory and then
Yep.
implement that solution and
Yep.
validate it as well. Fair enough. Fair enough.
And it helps with studying too. If you decide to take the Veeam exams,
It's true.
it's
It's true.
another good opportunity. So
That totally makes
it's
sense. I mean, you're literally addressing a handful of issues in writing this book, studying, being a better professional, improving, the environment at work and for your customers and such. So
yep.
it all ties in together is probably a good way to put it.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yep. For the next question, what has been the most surprising part of the publishing process for you? And you can, if you're comfortable sharing, good and or bad.
Um, Probably sales of the books. I know the first one didn't do very well. And then when I came out with version 11, I get statements every so often on what my book has sold, quantities, and the total overall sales. Now it's in British pounds, so I have to kind of go on and translate that. Okay, what is it sold in Canadian dollars and stuff like that? But it was funny because the second book, version 11, more than doubled the sales of the first book, and it's still in the lead by a little bit over the version 12 book, but the version 12 book is catching up and stuff. So I guess that's the kind of surprising part. And interesting part.
That is a good point. Do you think that possibly is how do I put this? Most organizations don't jump to the latest and greatest. They give it time to work out
Yes.
the kinks and bugs and such. I
Yep.
think that's probably a factor why you saw an increase in sales with 11 versus
Yep.
10, literally.
Yeah.
And you'll probably see something similar in time with version 12 of the book.
Yeah, as well as version 13, I can see, because
Yeah.
that's going to be a big change in the way the architecture is and everything like that. So it's kind of, I'm already thinking about that as it's going to come out.
Cool.
Yeah, that
Makes
will
sense.
definitely take time to adopt the 13 for sure. So if some of the audience or people that know you or don't know you and hear about it, right, and they think, you know what, I want to write a book about either technical aspects or just I want to write a book. Do you have any advice you could give aspiring author to get published? So I have no idea. So in my head, it's almost like music, right? They send the records, then everyone rejects them, and maybe 5 years later, someone picks them up, and then you have U2 or something like this. Is it
Yep.
similar for writing a book?
Kind of, sorta. First off, you have to approach a publisher. So I was kind of lucky in that regard where they approached me first versus me having to go out and approach this one and this one and this one and say, okay, are you guys interested in a book on Veeam or whatever, right? So that's the first step. And then if you use the product daily, it's probably slightly easier to write a book versus having to go on to like the help docs or Google and search up things to then come up with ideas and things like that. Like I've used Veeam for so long, it's not hard to come up with ideas for the book, but then it's a matter of, okay, do they approve my ideas and my outline and things like that? But it's honestly, it's rewarding because I get asked if somebody has a book at a VeeamON event or somewhere else, it's like, oh, can you sign this for me kind of thing. And I'm not in it for fame. I don't care. It's helping the community and sharing knowledge and answering questions and things like that. So, but if you can get a publisher, that's the biggest first step. But once you jump that hurdle, then after that, it's fairly simple.
Yeah, and I can attest to this. I might myself have carried books around to VeeamONs for others to get signed by you and back.
Yep.
Slowly going out of the camera's view here.
It's all
Hey,
right.
I'm a fanboy, but Chris is super supportive of everyone. And I can vouch for this as Kendiko. He's always willing to assist, always willing to answer any questions. And
100%.
yeah, he's just one of the truly gems in this industry. So if you're not connected with Chris, highly recommend you do such. If you're not following his blog, I would recommend you do that as well. And maybe towards the end of this call, I'll drop some links where you can, if you're not familiar with where to obtain a copy of his book, we'll share that information as well.
Yeah.
Chris, we have a question from Ron from the audience. If you want to quickly,
Yeah,
talk
sure.
about this.
I just saw it pop up, and
Okay.
I well, we all keep up with updates because we get notices. Where I work, we're a Veeam partner, so I have a lot of notices come. Also, being in the Vanguards, we get a lot of heads up things before even a lot of the public knows. But what I tend to do when I'm doing my books is whatever the latest release is at the time, I make note of that because usually chapter one in all my books has been in the first book, it was installing Veeam. And then in the next two books, it was installing as well as upgrading Veeam. And at the time, I would make note of whatever the build number was of the book, of the actual software at the time. So it may be based on version 12, might have been based on just version 12 and not 12.1 and stuff like that. So I keep up with the updates, but the books themselves, when they come out, are based on whatever the most current version is.
Okay. Makes sense.
Cool. Thank you, sir. Yep. I think, again, this kind of piggybacks to whenever you're posting an article, for example, like a blog post or a LinkedIn article or a technical article internally for your workplace. What do you hope your readers take away from that? In this example, your book.
Just to learn learn something new about Veeam. Maybe it's a feature that I found useful, wrote about, and you'll find it useful as well. Just take something away from reading it. I know a lot of people have said to me in passing on LinkedIn and comments and things like that that they've found my books useful when they've studied for like the VMCE and stuff like that to help them pass it, because there's a lot of stuff in there that they've read and they used and put towards when they do the exam and stuff like that. But just all it is just learn about Veeam, have a passion for it, like what we do and whatnot in our daily lives and stuff like that. So
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and so my next question kind of feeds off this a little bit. So you get a lot of feedback from users and people have read your book or heard about you. Is there anything like memorable feedback from readers that stands out that you want to share?
not really. A lot of people just have like compliments, or some people have said, "Oh, have you thought about writing about this or doing this, or what about this topic?" And it's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I completely forgot about that topic. Say in this version, like version 12, there might have been something I missed. I'll keep that on the back burner and have it in my list for, say, the next book, like version 13. Okay, is this going to be the same function? Is it going to change? Do I need to rethink what I'm going to write about and whatnot?" But it's mostly positive, as well as, like I said, "Oh, I'm going to be at VeeamON. Can you sign my book?" and all that stuff. I know at one of the VeeamONs, we had the community booth, and Veeam had bought a stack of books, and I had put my autograph in all of them and stuff like that, and they gave them out to people as they came up, and they were appreciative of it. So
Yeah, I was there. That was pretty cool. It was fun to watch.
yeah,
Sure.
Like I was like, I know this guy.
Rock star,
Yeah.
right? No, for sure. I actually kind of, going back to that question, and I think again this resonates with a lot of us. Do you ever have concerns with like imposter syndrome while publishing or writing a book, I should say?
oh yeah, you always have that sitting there in the back of your mind. It's like, okay, well, I wrote about this. Is somebody going to say, "Oh, well, he just took that from the help documentation and did this and that and whatnot"? But the nice thing with doing these books and the publisher is they look at everything and they actually have somebody there that knows the product and stuff. So they'll actually read through it. And I don't know whether they use ChatGPT or what now, but they probably put stuff that I write in there and see if it comes up and is it similar or identical to like the help documentation or something like that. So I try to use my own words and convey it my own way. Same thing with my blog. I don't do things verbatim and word for word. I put it in my own words. It's my daily experience or whatever with the product. So
So
Right, right.
they do have a technical advisor on staff to really review that you're not completely off bunkers there and utterly wrong.
yes, yeah, like it'll come back with a comment saying, "Okay, this is worded too close to this. Can you change it or rephrase it so that it's not quite the same as this?" And they'll actually put an example and a link to, say, the help documentation that it's similar to.
And you've touched on this, but with the next question, like how does it feel to see your work resonate with others? And I'm sure the biggest compliment that you can take is someone providing you feedback saying, Chris, in this example, I did XYZ as you outlined in your book, and it
Yep.
worked flawlessly, right? And I've learned from it as well. And we're starting to see, improvements not only again in our environment, but also our customers are being affected in a positive way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's always somebody that has something to say. And I think probably one of the best, I don't know if it's a compliment or how to phrase it, but there's somebody on LinkedIn. He's over in Europe, I believe. He does training with me. Klaus, I can't remember his last name. But whenever he does training and holds classes, he actually gives my book away
Oh, wow.
in the class. And he always mentions me. tags me in the post when he's having training and saying, "Oh yeah, you'll get this book by," and tags my name and all that kind of stuff. So it's flattering in a way.
Mhm.
But like I said, I'm not in it for. I'm not a glory hound, or you guys know me. I'm very
Yep.
quiet and laid back and stuff like that. I do it to help the community. That's what it
Yep.
is.
Yep. I definitely can vouch for that, as can Nico, for sure.
Absolutely. So, Chris, you already mentioned you're working on book 13 or version 13, not book 13. Well, maybe in a few years it will be book number 13.
Yeah, we'll see.
But are there any other books or projects you're working on? And it could be like even not IT related. I mean, maybe you really like writing and you might do some fictional writing. I don't know. Anything you want to share?
Not at the moment. I did get approached by the same publisher about writing a VMware book. And the more I thought about it, I just kind of thought, no, I don't really want to go down that road. It's just there's so much out there by a lot of the really technical and good guys like Duncan and William and Cormac and all those guys, and it's like there's nothing really that I can write that would be worthwhile in that space anyways.
Mhm.
So I'm just gonna kind of stick to the Veeam space and just stay in my lane, as they say.
And it's a
No.
comfort zone as well,
Yeah.
right? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%. So we've touched on a few times, you're currently working on version 13 of the book. Can you share any details about it without giving too much away? When do you anticipate it being available? So on and so forth.
Well, first off, I need to get a good build of version 13, and we need to know when Veeam's going to release it. We always know the answer to that is when it's ready.
Yep.
And stuff. But it's usually when we get, being a partner, we typically get like the RC release or the RTM release or whichever one you want to call it, right? And as soon as I get something like that, as well as I try to leverage some people I know in marketing to get me the what's new. And as soon as I can get my hands on the what's new, I can see everything that's new, and then I can start to compose and think about my outline and all those kinds of things. So
Makes sense. Makes sense. And there's a question here in the chat from
yep,
Andre Thomas. What platform
yep.
do you use to write the book, and how do you organize your thoughts?
The writing is done in Word. The template that the company uses is a Word template, so it's not. I don't write in anything fancy or anything like that. I just use Word. Um, Organizing my thoughts is fairly straightforward because what they do is before I start writing a book, I have to do a book outline. So the book outline has the chapters, what the title of the chapters are going to be, and then each chapter has 4 to 5 sections, and each of those sections will have a title. And then further down in the outline, there's like a what you're actually going to talk about within that section. So it's once I have that and they approve all of that, then it's basically just okay. I got to write about this for this section, okay, and then I just think about do whatever I need to do and start writing about it. So that's how everything's organized, and it's nothing fancy. It's Microsoft Word that I write in.
Cool.
I'm actually surprised you use Word, or that's what the publisher uses. So did you run in any? Do you also? Well, let me. I have bad memories from college using Word. I know it's gotten better, but I'm still burned there a
Yep.
little bit. And I remember, like probably everyone else recently, or has worked with Word, you put in a graphic and your formatting just leaves the building. So yeah, I know your books. I've read your books. You had lots of graphics in there, and this is all done in Word, and that works well
Yep.
enough.
It's done in Word, and within their template, you basically select a graphic, and then you pick a certain format from the formatting bar. Because you know how you usually have things like normal, paragraph, heading,
Yep.
all that. They've got all of that predefined, and there's one in there for an image. So I select the image, pick that formatting, and it formats the image properly for them.
That's very good.
So
Yep. I didn't have a template in college. We just got another question from Ron. When you write an outline of the book, is there actually someone at the publisher that knows Veeam and actually knows your outline is valid, or do they trust you based on your knowledge and experience?
Yeah, there's usually somebody there that knows the product and everything, so they will double check it and look at it. There is a bit of trust with my knowledge and my experience, but they still like to double check things and cross reference and do those kinds of things. So there is somebody there that does validate it.
Yeah. That's the technical advisor you mentioned before.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
good.
There's usually a technical advisor, and then also when I do the outline, part of the outline is recommending people that can review the book as well. So I know Rick Vanover wrote a foreword or wrote a special chapter or a special section in one of my books. He's also reviewed it. Matt Crape has, who I know very well. One of the last books, Craig, over in the UK, did a review for me. He now works at Veeam too. So
Mhm.
it's just a matter of those people reviewing it, looking at it as well, because having people within Veeam, you definitely know you can't
Oh yeah.
fudge your way through writing a chapter.
No pressure there. It might also
Yes.
endanger your Vanguard status if they read that
It's
shit. They're like, this is all wrong. Kick him out of the program. So I think I have one more question here before we can open the floor to any other question you might have. And you touched on a lot of things, but if you had to single out one or two things, what you'd enjoy most about being an author, that might be a bit tough.
like I said, I don't do it for the fame or anything like that. It's helping the community. When I see people commenting and liking the book, or oh yeah, I used your books and I passed the VMCE or something like that, that to me is gratification enough that okay, it's worth it. So people are using it. There's people that use it when they're doing their daily job to do administration work. I've heard a couple people mention that to me as well, but it's just knowing that it's helping the community is enough for me.
Yeah, and I think that's in line with a lot of people who are usually on the calls or in the groups where we don't really do it for the fame or all the money. I mean, you said you make a little bit of money, but if you were
Yeah.
really making money, you probably retired sitting on an island and writing books.
Yeah,
But it's really like
yeah,
giving back
exactly.
to the community and helping out. And like for myself, and I've told Rick that too when we talked about Veeam documentation, and I had a discussion with him about sure backup documentation. It's like, look, Veeam documentation has gotten a lot better, but the first thing I do is I search for a blog post of a community member who's done it, and it's so much easier and so much better and so much more tangible for me to follow it versus documentation that tends to be a bit on the drier side, shall we say.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's fair to say. I think many of us follow that same suit, Nico. We tend to rely, no disrespect to any of the vendors for that matter, or any of the documentation that they share with their audience, but we tend to rely on folks that we actually have a connection with in some capacity, and we know that we can learn from their experience firsthand, the good, the bad, and the ugly, on how we can improve the processes for us as we
Yeah,
go through that implementation. No, for sure.
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Cool, cool. Well, again, if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to drop them in the chat. And while we wait, I'm going to drop just a couple links in the chat. For those that are not familiar with Chris's books or how to obtain them, they can be found in Amazon. Highly recommend you check them out. And give it a purchase. I think you're going to benefit from it. And speaking of, it's always nice to have that book in your possession, and regardless of what version you're currently running on, because in most cases, the information that's shared in each of these books is current and it's already obviously been validated, but it remains current throughout that version. So,
Yeah,
since, Chris has moved from 10 to 11 to 12 and soon to be 13, well, it goes without saying 10 is not going to change anytime soon, right? So if your company or organization is still running on version 10 for whatever reason, everything that Chris has placed into that book is still a good source of truth.
yep,
But you should still upgrade if you're on
exactly.
version 10.
Big no. Yes, especially like for support reasons and such.
Yeah,
Yes, don't disagree there. But we won't get into details, but there are some companies that love to resist the temptation to upgrade.
well,
And
that's true.
to each their own. Yeah, to each their own.
hmm
And
So,
I would go ahead.
yeah, I'm just saying while you put the links in, Chris, and it's now, if is there any? I mean, we've asked a bunch of questions, right? And we're grateful for your answer and all that. Anything we haven't asked that you would like to share or talk about?
No, not really. Hopefully, version 13 book will be exciting and something different, given that there's going to be Linux involved. So
Hmm. So you will have to lap that out a lot more probably for this book with a lot more pictures and graphics because of the
yeah,
architecture changes.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. This one's going to be this one will be a different challenge because of the way the architecture and stuff is going to change.
So and
So
then because of this, you're probably going to have the focus points always change between the books, right? Like when CDP
yes,
came out, that was something. So you're not in 13, you're probably really gonna the majority of the book will be about architecture changes, I would imagine, and not
yeah,
about like, okay, here's how you set up a replication.
yeah, kind of like that. I tend to keep chapter 1 fairly static in all the books. It's installing or upgrading. I usually put both of them in there. So chapter 1 is always a nice way to get started on the book because it's like, okay, I just got to update this graphic, change this step, or add these extra steps or whatever, and then go from there.
So what you're saying, chapter 1 has been recycled numerous times.
It makes it quicker to get the book out
Understand.
because honestly, it took 6 to 8 months for version 10. I did version 11 in, I think, 4 months. And then I think I did version 12 in 3. So
Okay, so you've
it's
definitely improved on the processes throughout this journey.
yeah. Yeah, it's like getting used to the template, getting used to the way they send feedback, the way they put comments in there, what I have to change.
Right.
And
They
stuff
have
like
an
that.
expectation, as do you of them. So it's
Yeah.
the relationship has matured more than anything else.
Yeah, it seems to get easier. So now we'll see what happens with version 13. Do I go back to a 6 to 8 month thing? And then version 14 comes out around the corner?
You're stuck in this vicious circle right now, Chris.
Well, when I did the version 10 book, by the time it came out, version 11 had already come out.
Right. But again,
So
not everyone jumps to the latest and greatest when it's made available.
no.
So everything that you put out in 10 was still current, if that's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, Tommy, M365.
That's an excellent question. So yes,
that would be an interesting book to write about. Yeah, it definitely would.
I think you got voluntold.
Yeah, I'll get him to co-author it with me.
I like how you turn that back on him. There you go.
But I
Team
do
effort.
think it would be a good idea because I don't think there's that much out there in the market. I mean, there's about Veeam, right? It's clearly not like
Yeah.
VMware/Broadcom, but there are books out there about Veeam. And I haven't looked lately, but for Veeam Backup, for M365, I still call it VBO. Um, I don't know what is out there really, if there's any.
Yeah.
So that might
And
be.
it actually would be an interesting book only because now you've got both all your on-prem stuff and now VDC, right?
Mhm.
So there's 2 angles to come at it.
Now, that actually makes me think about another question. So, have you thought about your author? I know you think you know where I'm going. Since you're an object first ace, and object first is immutable storage on-prem, it's a box, it's a spin-off, not from Veeam, but from Radmi, who was one of the co-founders of Veeam, for just if no one know, just putting context around it. And object first start their own program very similar to Vanguard's, and a few of us have that box and are testing it.
Yep.
Chris is one of those people. I know that for a fact. So the question would be have you thought about branching out a little bit? It's still within the Veeam world because it's the best storage for Veeam. That's their slogan. So
Yeah.
any ideas on that?
Don't know if it would be enough for a book though.
Hmm.
It could maybe be a chapter in a book. That might be
That's what
something
I
to
was going to
think
say.
about. That might be something to think about for the version 13 book where I look at I was trying to pitch a book on version 12, the latest version, 12.3, but a security centric focused book because there's like MFA, there's a bunch of stuff to do with security that they've done recently, but it got rejected. So it was like, okay, whatever. But maybe that would be something I could bring into the version 13 book and include object first, right? Because it is kind of security related with immutability and all that stuff.
I think it's a good idea. I think version 13 will take you a bit longer than 3-4 months to write, but looking forward to it.
Yes, it sounds like it's going to.
We're no pun again, no puns intended, but we're increasing his workload as we speak. It's okay though. It's okay. Busy is good. Busy is good.
Absolutely.
Well, I think we would all be remiss, Nico and I, and Chris for that matter, if we didn't include some additional links. And I'm just going to drop them in here. The first being for Veeam, which is in a few weeks, April, let me double check. I think it's April 21st, yep, to the 23rd in San Diego. So if you're in the area or if you plan to be in that area and looking for an event to attend, that's Veeam centric, like-minded individuals, please check it out. In addition to that, again, I'm going to just drop a couple more links. Chris, I know, again, you're not this type of person, but I'm going to do it on your behalf, my friend. Here's a link to Chris's blog. Feel free to check it out. Good, useful information. And the last one that comes to mind is the Veeam 100 directory. That is a combination of where you can find Vanguards like ourselves, Legends, and Veeam MVPs who are employees of the organization for Veeam, that is. But also there's the Community Hub where you can get to interact with folks like ourselves here as well. And I think this has been a fantastic conversation. Not to cut anybody short, but I'll give everyone an opportunity. If you have any additional questions or comments that you want to post in the chat, you're welcome to do so now. But before we get to that, once again, thank you, Madalena, for hosting. Thank you for taking time out of your day to do such, and to Veeam as well for your support. And we're looking forward to future events. We don't have one scheduled next at this time, but Nico, I'll be in touch. I have an idea. You mentioned Object First. That kind of triggered.
Yeah. I think we have both the same idea, but we connect.
Cool.
Yeah, and also for me, Chris, thank you very much. I think it was great. I learned a lot about book writing. I know we had some conversations and events about this, but I really enjoyed it. So thanks for being on. Thanks for being you, and good luck with version 13.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
For sure.
That's it.
Okay, with that being said, I don't see any other questions. Thank you again, Madalena, and our audience for that matter, for joining us. And be on the lookout for our next event, when that'll be. And hopefully sooner than later, we'll have an in-person event here in the DC area. It just takes a little bit more effort and coordination just to figure out a proper place, where it's kind of in the middle of the city, that's convenient for everyone, whether you're in Virginia, DC, and Maryland. And but we'll definitely share that information when it becomes available. With that being said, I hope everyone has